Hey guys, what's going on? Took a break from the game for a while. Just wanted to pop in and see how you're doing. I heard you guys had a entire license chapter delayed for a bug fix, so I'm sure the game is very healthy. You know, everything's looking great, and I can't wait to start uploading on this game again. I'm sure the game has an unseen polish, and they took great care. So, what is that? Alright, let's sit down for a minute. This is by far the worst patch behaviors ever put, and I'm gonna use two words to define it to sort of sum up why it's so terrible. Obligatory patch. This is the first patch where we actively looked at it as a community, and most people with any sense said, behavior, we don't like this, do not put this in the game. And their reaction to that was no. And somehow they're still gonna find a way to sneak in the phrase, we hear you. Behavior, you don't hear us. You haven't heard us for a while. And if you're doing so, you have a brick wall in your ears. Legit, look at this background footage. I decided to include this game because they spent the entire game running back and forth to each other, body blocking, taking hits, and just using EMPs to deny me my power. It's not even like Singularity is a weak killer. He's top 10 in the game and he has been for a while now. But it just shows what survivors can do and get away with while putting you into situations where you either have to tunnel or slug, and then have to suffer the consequences because behavior only thought of one high end of one role, but not the other. In this game, it made one guy basically uncatchable, and I could only tunnel out the UE to win. This game went on for 20 minutes. For all intents and purposes, we can just define this patch as the killer. So, behavior, let me put it to you like this. If you truly think that killers playing whichever way they want to play, and sometimes being put into a situation where they can only play one or two ways, and that is quote-unquote evil, then I've got good news for you. You're not going to have to worry about offending the killer player base or your diehard community that has sat with your really questionable decisions for years, because one day when this patch drops, the morning that survivors that have been squealing and whining about their incompetence of the game are finally rewarded for it, they're going to wake up and suddenly have no killers to play against. Not only killers, but certain survivors are just not going to agree with this mindset, and rightfully so. Those dedicated players that sat there and made cosmetics for you, concepts, artwork, and 7-hour videos on just add-ons alone will walk away, and your game will be a shell of what it has been before. But these are all very big overlapping statements, so anybody who hasn't seen the patch, which if you're in this community, that's pretty unlikely, it's kind of the talk of the town, but let me just go over each change so we kind of understand what perspective I'm coming from and what I think of every single one of the changes. First thing, let's not even beat around the bush, let's just dive right into the meat and potatoes. The anti-slugging, anti-tunneling, and anti-face camping changes. I think 2 out of 3 of these are bad. I'll try to keep some positives in the video, so let's go for the anti-slugging. While I think it is semi-bad, mostly because of a clip shown by Epidemi where he basically killed the entire team and should have just won, gets punished because of his playstyle.
Ready for that base kit UV? There it is. Why would I get rewarded for that? They get base kit UV for the entire game now, by the way.
But overall, I mean, it's a sweeping way to make sure that people don't get slugged out for 4 minutes if the killer is purely going for that, so I guess that's good. It just creates a really bad scenario for flashlight saves, but we'll get onto that with the anti-tunneling changes because, you know, those are by far the worst. So for right now, anti-slugging is decently okay with me. There's one scenario where it's pretty bad, but looking at it in a vacuum purely, I think it's fine. Now, anti-face cam changes. The problem with this one is that nobody alive asked for this whatsoever. And that's kind of a common theme for this patch, but
yeah, that's pretty true.
Increasing the face cam distance, the only good thing I can say is that they gave us a bar to show us the anti-cam thing, which is genuinely a very good change, and I'm glad that's happening on the survivor side. But who asked that the face cam distance was too short? Sure, you can say proxy camping was still an issue, which in some of my matches, sure it was, but at the same time, you're not fixing the sweeping issue. I know what's on your mind, it's Bubba, right? Bubba can still sit in basement and perfectly camp just fine. So your large culprit for the issue hasn't been affected whatsoever, so this is just useless. But now let's get to the elephant in the room. Elephant green screen effect. The anti-tunneling changes, with the biggest air quotes that you can fit on screen. Their idea for anti-tunneling was making off the record one of the strongest perks in the game, base kit, giving survivors elusive so they don't make footstound steps, they don't make coughing, they don't leave blood trails, they basically don't make any sound at all for 30 whole seconds. Additionally, they also decided to give collision back so that body blocking is re-abusable again. And the word abusable is a very strong sentiment towards this change, because if you go to any YouTuber's kind of coverage of this patch, you will hear them say that survivors were abusing these anti-tunneling changes with the 30-second endurance, the body blocking, or the elusive thing, which is very abusable for the slugging scenario. So let me paint you a picture. You down one guy. He's on the floor, and he's steadily charging that admittedly very slow 2-minute timer to get the base kit unbreakable for, I think, himself or the entire team. I'm not sure which. But let's say out of the corner of your eye, if you're lucky enough, you see somebody with a flashlight going for the save. Let's also say said survivor just got off the hook. What do? You're in a complete lose-lose dilemma. If you pick up the guy and just eat the save, sure, you might not waste as much time, but you get obviously stunned, you lose a down, and you potentially lose a hook. On the other side of the coin, if you decide to chase the guy that just got off hook, he has 30 seconds of endurance, haste, and doesn't leave any scratch marks. This is all while the guy on the floor is charging up a base kit unbreakable for the rest of the game, and if you do end up going for the guy who just freshly got off hook, you encounter what is most likely the most patronizing change in this entire patch: the bad boy hooks and the praise king golden stars. If behavior thinks you're not playing in accordance to the survivor rulebook, you'll get a red hook. And all other unique hooks are in a nice golden color. Yippee! Look at the nice shiny colors. You want this, right? So, besides shiny colors, what would someone be missing out on if they just decided to tunnel anyway? Well, my dear misbehaving killer, you wouldn't get to reap the benefits of the 15-second Tier 1 Bloodlust bonus. You heard that right. From the last time this patch was introduced, the benefits were base kit pop, base kit barbecue, and a base kit haste, not bloodlust. But what difference does that make? Well, if you consider the fact that behavior is very openly stated, this is to make a discrepancy between the strongest killers in the game because they usually use their power, and the weakest killers in the game so they could actually benefit from these changes. Every single fucking weak killer uses their power the moment they hook somebody. Wraith, Dredge, Ghostface, all of them use their power so they won't benefit from this even slightly. The reason they took these kind of overlapping changes from the last iteration of this patch away, by the way, is because they thought it was too much hand-holding. I'm gonna withhold that term for later, but in what world does a bloodlust that goes away upon using your power or chasing a survivor become too strong with a small gen kick bonus and barbecue, which actively incentivizes you not to tunnel? So the takeaway from this is, if you don't tunnel, nothing happens. If you do tunnel, nothing happens. So these anti-tunneling changes do effectively nothing. Yippee! Oh, and along with this change, they decided to nerf furtive chase, which, if you know what furtive chase does, whenever you hook the obsession, you get a speed boost and undetectable for a little bit, but that is a unique hook, because you'd usually pair it with friends to the end so you can get an exposed and you have another target to go for, which again isn't the same guy that just got hooked, because if you tunnel, you don't benefit from the perk. So they nerfed it, despite it being one of the most healthy ways to incentivize not tunneling. I don't see why they nerfed the perk at all. Speaking of unnecessary nerfs, they just decided to shoot Pinhead, so now his chains don't affect people that are in deep wound. So if somebody comes and body blocks in your face and you have no choice but to hit them, they can't just, you know, go do a totem, go solve the box with no drawbacks. You just have to sit there and take it like a good boy. And frankly, that's what they seem to expect out of this patch, that killer players are just going to accept this, and rather than trying to play an asymmetrical horror game where you're trying to kill people and play the power role, you're playing a social interaction game where you're trying to appease the survivors. What has this game become? But with the way this patch is, you'd think that the strongest killer strategies getting nerfed would mean the strongest survivor strategy. Are you fucking kidding? This is behavior interactive. Sabotage. Untouched. Basically denying killers hooks. BNPs and gen rushing. Untouched, doing your objective faster, which is basically tunneling for killer. And body blocking, preventing you from getting downs and or hooks. Untouched. In fact, made even stronger now. On top of that, they decided to change the syringe. Wow. Okay, an actual good killer. No, they buffed it. They made it remove your exhaustion, so now survivors can do a triple spin burst and almost make it look like they're cheating. Oh, and also, for an anti-bug fix patch, that again, they delayed an entire licensed chapter for. Killers are more bugged than ever. Knight basically can't use his power, which, I mean, I'm not gonna complain about. A bunch of other killers, I mean, twins, because of course it's twins, also just has a bunch of new bugs in a bug fix chapter. So what was the point of releasing this at all? But I think you're starting to see the picture. This is an agenda patch, and behavior is very, very blatantly catering towards survivors, but not even the dedicated survivors that actually like this game, the crybabies that can't get anything done and just seem to complain rather than acknowledge their own mistakes. If you have to put this into a vacuum again, the killer is getting very small benefits for doing their job, but is also kept in a very, very tight constriction to play a certain way to make sure the survivor doesn't get too angry. But the survivor gets a bunch of buffs and hand-holding for actively losing the game. In Asian servers, they don't run anti-tunnel perks because they very actively believe the best form of anti-tunnel is to not get downed at all. So, while I agree with the slugging changes, the tunneling changes, that is hand-holding. No matter how you want to put it, it is hand-holding. But no, killers, you know, being incentivized to not tunnel by giving them a few small buffs, which I think are very healthy, that's way too much. That's too much hand-holding. Oh, what? Because of the S-tier killers? Do you want to see what nerfs and blight feel like right now? They feel like this. While the gap between the D-tier killers like Ghostface and the high-tier killers like Rasu, Blight, and Nurse just keeps getting bigger. And not only that, your tunneling changes haven't done anything because the incentives, that's going to be the keyword for my next tangent, are not there.
They're not there! They're not there!
And are nowhere near as attractive as the in-game benefits of tunneling a survivor out and getting one player off the board. Behavior, the key here isn't to stop people from tunneling, it's to give them a reason not to tunnel, not to slug, not to face camp in the first place. If survivors are allowed to use their strongest strategies, killers should be able to do this too. You can't make a killing game where the power roll has a set parameters of you can play as much as you want, but you can't play a certain way, while survivors have all the freedom in the world and aren't being labeled as evil for doing so. And the worst part is, the whole reason for this patch comes from a survey where survivors could express the reasons why they've been uninstalling the game or have been completely unsatisfied with its current state. But if you look at it, there is nothing for killers to express that same dissatisfaction. I think we're starting to see the trend. And the reason why, if you're a killer player in this game, and you've had every reason to quit this game, now is the time, because it's only going to get worse. Because next patch, we're going to have something way better than people using Wicked to instantly get themselves off of Basement Hook and run into your face with 3 health states. So in summary, this patch hoped to stop, not disincentivize, stop tunneling, stop slugging, and stop camping, while also fixing a bunch of bugs. There are more bugs than ever. The benefits for not tunneling are so minuscule to none that there's basically no point in adhering them. The slugging changes are basically mute because the survivors with an actual brain, which I think is being very lenient here, can force you into lose-lose scenarios with the slugging changes, with the base kit invincible. And the anti-face camp changes don't affect the one killer that actively face camps. What a fucking disaster. I only ever really play this game when I'm with my very close friend group, and that has nothing to do with DBD. That's us hanging out and messing around because we're not taking the game seriously. And that is how this game probably should be played from now on, if this is how they're gonna address the quote-unquote serious stuff in the game. This game does not deserve to be taken seriously. Dead by Daylight was usually a party game. They tried to make it too competitive, and now it's not competitive or a party game. It's just a joke. An asymmetrical horror game that has more in common with a dating simulator than anything to do with horror.
It's like GPS. You can see how close the nearest gay man is away from you.
A horror game where the scariest thing behavior thinks you can do is play to win. So, dear viewer, all I can ask of you is if you seriously disagree with these changes and you are staying with this game to the sweet bitter end, all I ask is that you make your voice heard. Because they may not hear us the way they say they do, but they can't ignore the uproar. Because if they do, this previously titan of a horror game will be dead by daylight. Thanks for listening to my analysis on the patch. I think you guys deserved a sort of reason why I haven't been uploading DBD content recently, and frankly, with the way these changes are, I doubt that's gonna change. I might do 1 or 2 more Dead by Daylight videos and then focus on a game that actually respects itself. I mean, I'm playing it on the side, you know, I'm playing it with my friends for shits and giggles, and also so I can be updated with the game for this video, but it's kind of sad to say, but I definitely doubt I'm going to be dedicating this channel to Dead by Daylight anymore. That was the original plan, and if this is how Dead by Daylight treats itself, I'd much rather upload on a game that has some actual self-respect. I did promise that concept video. I haven't forgotten about it. That is something I promised. I'll do maybe 1 or 2 videos before that, just because of some other stuff. But that is coming, and I hope you're looking forward to it, because I'm putting a shit ton of time into it, and I think it's going to turn out really great. So do look forward to that, and behavior, get your head out of your ass, and don't leave this game in the fridge. Ah!
Two hands meet at sea.